The coffee pot sat cold on the counter, rim stained the color of old pennies. Earl cupped his hands around an empty mug, trying to drink the quiet. The furnace clicked, thought about working, and changed its mind. Outside, snowlight turned the window into a dull square of milk. The chair across from him waited like a question he would not answer. His breath made a small cloud on the glass, then vanished as if shy. The house smelled faintly of dust and yesterday's toast, a tired museum. He listened because there was nothing else left to do in the mornings. That was when a sound pushed through the winter hush, thin and sharp. Not wind, not pipes, something small calling from a big world. He stood so fast the mug tapped the table and trembled like a tooth. Boots swallowed his feet, laces dragging like old thoughts. The door fought him, the latch stiff with ice and disuse. Snow had climbed the porch rail overnight. Soft shoulders slumped. The cry came again, somewhere between a whistle and a whimper. "You hear it too?" A boy's voice, breath white as chalk, jumped at the hedge, a red hat crooked, cheeks raw. Mittens fat with clumsy courage. He couldn't be more than 10, but his eyes had winter in them. "By the street," he said, pointing to the plow's hard-rolled wall. Earl nodded, already sinking into the drift like an apology. They dropped to their knees without talking, as if words might scare it off. Earl's fingers broke the crust and slid into the biting powder beneath. The boy scraped with both hands, scoops flicking like frantic birds. Snow burned the skin in a clean, cruel way that makes you curse softly. Diesel smell from the road threaded through the cold like a stain. A handspan down, Earl found a pocket of air, then a hard little something. "Slow," he said, though his own hands were not listening well. They pulled snow away the way you wipe dust from a framed picture. A tuft surfaced gray and white frozen into a brittle thistle. The sound stopped, and the world went suddenly too quiet. It was a cat, small as a loaf, whiskers arched and iced into white needles. Her fur was a crust, her ears two pale leaves stuck in frost. The boy slid his arms under her like lifting a sleeping secret. She didn't bend. She was a stiff page that winter had pressed flat. Earl unwound his scarf, rashly generous, wool slick with melting snow. They wrapped her careful, as if the wrong touch could crack her. "Is she?" the boy began, then swallowed the rest like a hot coal. Earl touched 2 fingers to her ribs, counting against the stillness. 1, 2, 3. He found only the echo of his own pulse at first. Then the faintest flutter, a fish turning under black water. They carried her inside, trail of wet footprints marking worry on linoleum. Warmth met them at the threshold, like a dog that remembered their names. Earl spread a towel on the table, the good one no one ever used. He warmed a sock of rice in the oven till it breathed soft heat. The boy held the bundle high, face close, whispering air into courage. Frost clung to her whiskers like sugar on a brittle cookie edge. Earl rubbed along the grain, then against, waking skin with patient hands. Her paws were stones. The pads gray, claws trapped in tiny prisons. The house filled with the soft hush of wool and the click of the clock. The whole world seemed to lean in and wait with them. "I'm Caleb," the boy offered, as if names might help keep things warm. "Earl," he said back, throat rusty from a season of not saying much. He remembered a page from a book, warm slow, never hot, keep hope steady. He remembered a voice saying, "Slow saves," and where that voice used to sit. The dryer hummed, a low drum roll behind the door, promising not much. "Is she a she?" Caleb asked, eyes searching the face for answers. "We'll ask the vet if we get that far," Earl said, and winced at his own words. The cat's ear twitched once, then went back to being a carved thing. Caleb smiled, small and shy, as if it might scare the twitch away. Snow pecked at the window, 100 little knuckles rapping. The sock cooled, the room warmed, and worry changed its shape. "Maple Street Clinic," Earl said, already seeing the posted winter hours. He layered towels, scarf, another towel, a careful winter nest. Caleb pressed the bundle to his chest, guarding heat with small shoulders. The truck coughed awake after a stubborn, smoky argument. Headlights cut the falling snow into a tunnel of bright, nervous dots. The wipers clacked, an anxious metronome keeping time with their breathing. Earl gripped the wheel so hard his knuckles learned a new color. "Hang on, little one," Caleb whispered, voice thin to a thread. The clinic sign floated ahead, a dull yellow coin in the storm. "Doctor." Singh met them at the door, eyes kind above a fogged mask. Warm slow, she said, taking the bundle with hands that meant it. The back room swallowed the cat, lights soft, machines whispering like rain. Caleb stood on tiptoes, trying to see around the hinge of a swinging door. Earl rubbed his cold hands together until they felt like someone else's. From behind the door came silence, then the quick click of something starting. A beat, maybe two, then a sharp, tiny sound rose and broke apart. Caleb grabbed Earl's sleeve, eyes wide as headlights in a curve. "Did you hear?" he began, but the sound cut off as if pinched. And the room, all at once, went so still the clock forgot to tick. The waiting room held its breath with them, chairs set like careful teeth. Fluorescent lights hummed a thin winter of their own above their heads. A poster about dental chews bent at one corner, wagging to the heater. Caleb's boots swung an inch off the floor, tapping a slow code on plastic. Earl rubbed a thumb along a knot in the armrest until it grew warm. Under the door, a stripe of light brightened, faded, brightened again. He could smell alcohol, warm vinyl, and the metallic hint of machines. Words like prognosis and hypothermia drifted by without landing. He tried to picture her breathing on her own soft lifts like tiny waves. He tried not to picture the other kind of quiet waiting behind glass. Dr. Singh pushed through the door, her eyes doing the talking first. "She's very cold," she said, voice low as if not to startle the room. "Warm fluids are going in, heating pads beneath, blankets above. We'll go slow," she added, hands showing the pace in small arcs. Caleb nodded too hard, as if nodding could help thaw a cat. Earl felt the word we land in him and make a place to sit. "No guarantees," the doctor said, not unkindly, but like weather. Earl remembered weather you outwait and weather that wins. He took a breath and set it down carefully where his feet could find it. "We'll be here," he said, and the promise surprised his mouth. Time unspooled in slow loops, and memory snuck in without knocking. The empty chair at breakfast, the coat still on its hook, patient. June's laugh caught in the hallway, like a song that won't leave. The hospital room, soft beeps, hands folded around a cooling hand. After, the house practicing silence until it became fluent and proud. He'd put out 2 plates for months, then 1, then none at all. Snow had come and gone, and he had not named a single storm. He'd spoken to the television like a neighbor on the porch. He'd thought the part of him that reached for small things had frozen. A boy and a cat had made a crack the wind could whistle through. The door sighed again, and Dr. Singh's shoes squeaked reassurance. "She's responding," she said, and the word felt round in the room. A heartbeat steadier now, breaths shallow but counting themselves. "We'll keep her here a couple hours, then reassess warmth at home." Caleb's smile broke and built again like sun trying the blind. "Can we see her?" he asked, the pleas hiding but audible. "For a minute," Dr. Singh said, palms down, folding the air calm. The back room was dim, a hush stuffed with careful machines. The cat lay under a small tent of blankets, whiskers freed of ice. A paw flexed once, then again like a match testing for flame. "Hey there, brave girl," Caleb whispered, words wrapped in wool. Earl rested 2 fingers near her shoulder, not touching, almost. Heat came off her in shy inches, borrowed from pads and time. He watched her sides lift, tiny bellows working at their slow job. Her ear turned toward his voice when he said, "Easy now." The movement landed in him like a bird he'd thought gone south. "We'll need a place that's warm and quiet," Dr. Singh murmured. Earl's kitchen rose before him, towels and a stove like old friends. He felt his house shift, making room it hadn't made in a year. "I've got it," he said, and didn't look for permission in the boy. Dr. Singh lifted the blanket edge, careful as if unveiling a painting. "She's either nursing or just finished," she said, clinical and gentle. The word nursing startled the air, set the room to a new angle. "Kittens?" Caleb said, the hope and fear braided into one cord. "If there are, they won't last long out there," Dr. Singh added. Earl felt the road he had just driven rise up under his shoes. The plowbank, the wind, the pocket of air like a small spare room. He listened and heard only his own blood making shoe noises. "We found her by the street," he said, as if the street could answer. Caleb's eyes found the door as if it had turned into a map. "I can keep her stable," Dr. Singh said, already moving in that way. "If there are babies, they have an hour, maybe 2 in this cold." The numbers sounded like church bells, close and far at once. Caleb stood straighter than 10, mittens clenched into purpose. Earl felt the old truck keys heavy and ready in his pocket. "We'll check the plowbank, the hedges, anywhere wind might tuck." "Bring towels, a box," Dr. Singh called, head bent over the small life. Earl nodded, remembering the good towel, the warm dryer drum. Snow shook itself from the awning as if to say, "Hurry, hurry." They backed toward the door, hearts already outside in the drift. Night had thickened by the time they reached the end of the drive. Headlights made the snow look crowded, every flake a face. The plowbank hunched along the curb, a white sleeping animal. They climbed it on their knees, hands digging, ears straining open. "The cold bit cleaner out here, a sharp apple of a night." "Listen," Caleb said, and the word turned them both into stillness. Traffic hushed far off, a tire hissed, a branch unburdened itself. Earl closed his eyes to hear better, and heard his name in the wind. No, not his name, a sound smaller, thinner, tucked inside the snow. A faint, peeping thread, as if someone were sewing winter back together. Snow held its breath around them, a white hush pressed to the curb. Caleb leaned forward, lips parted, as if hearing worked better that way. Earl scraped with cupped hands, not digging so much as listening. The sound threaded the drift like a stitch you can't place. It vanished whenever they moved too fast, as if speed frightened it. They went still, letting their heat carve a pause into the cold. There a pinprick peep, barely more than a thought made out loud. He dug in an arc, scooping sideways to keep the pocket intact. Air broke loose, warm as bread pulled from an oven that remembers. The smell faint milk, faint fur rose up and made time wobble. The pocket was just big enough for a curled hand and a prayer. Inside, a lump the size of a mouse quivered in damp gray. It shivered without opening its eyes, mouth making soft O's. Caleb dropped his mittens, skin needed where wool could not go. Earl stripped one glove with his teeth and cupped the tiny heat. Warmth bled from him like a slow apology he meant to keep. He tucked the kitten inside his coat against shirt and rib. "One," Caleb said, packing the word carefully so it wouldn't break. Snow sneaked down Earl's collar and stayed, a cold coin on skin. A car hissed past, a long soft comet in the corner of everything. They tunneled sideways, reading the snow by sound and give, a hollow, then a thud, then the sift of loosened crystals. Another kitten rolled into Earl's palm, darker, quieter, stubbornly here. A third came with a cry so thin it felt imagined and still true. Caleb lined the box with towels, a small borrowed nest of blue. He added the warmed rice sock from his pocket without asking. Steam lifted from their sleeves like tiny ghosts, undecided. Earl counted noses, then breaths, then the tally of his own heart. 3, Caleb said, trying on a smile that didn't quite button. The hedge rattled secrets to the wind and tapped the best ones. Back in the truck, the heater coughed and settled into a low breath. They pressed the kittens to skin, shirt buttons turning kind. Tiny mouths searched, rooting for answers they didn't know to want. June had knit the towel now cradling them, blue with uneven edges. Her voice tugged him from a winter with fewer empty rooms. "Keep them on heat, steady as a heartbeat," he told the quiet. Caleb nodded, cheeks salted with thaw and effort and hope. One kitten squeaked. Another only sighed as if already wise. The box became a small planet, their hands two patient suns. Fog unfurled on the windows, writing and erasing their breath. "Is that all of them?" Caleb asked, eyes on the sleeping drift. The question slid under Earl's coat and filed itself next to his ribs. He listened, with ears, with knuckles, with some retired part waking up. There, farther off, a thinner, tinier stitch tugging the night. Not from the bank now, but from the curb's iron mouth. The storm drain crouched, great black with wet and road. The sound came and went like a shy firefly behind glass. Earl looked at the dash clock and saw only his hands. "One more," he said, tasting fear metallic and cold. Caleb edged closer to the box, making a fortress of elbows. The grate was slick, a cold tongue of iron against their sleeves. Earl wedged his phone light between his teeth, beams shaking with breath. The drain's throat showed slick concrete, a trickle working south. Something pale huddled where the pipe folded into dark. Eyes? He couldn't tell, just a shape like a crumpled glove. "Hey, little one," he said, sending his voice down like a leaf. A peep answered, then hid, then dared again from the wet. Caleb hunched, back to the wind, holding the light with his shoulders. Cars swished by, respectful of their small republic on the curb. Snow dotted the phone screen and melted into commas. Earl slid flat, cheek to iron, arm threading into cold water. Wet crept up his sleeve and made a slow claim to the elbow. His hand found grit, then the rounded lip where concrete turns to pipe. A fishing dock flashed in his head, snapped line, warm laughter, and left. He let his fingers walk blind through unfriendly cold and shadow. Behind him, Caleb murmured to the box like a tiny congregation. A plow groaned somewhere up the street, heavy as a moving wall. Almost, Earl said to himself, to the drain, to a year that needed thawing. His fingertips brushed something that wasn't stone or water. Soft, then bone, then the paper-thin flutter of a breath. He widened his hand, made a pocket, begged the small weight to fall in. For a second he held only water and the ache of wanting. Then a moth-light press settled against his palm. He curled and felt a heartbeat tap him with careful manners. "Got you," he said, because sometimes bridges are made of words. The plow's orange washed over porches, slow and indifferent. Its horn tested the night, a warning to no one in particular. Earl started to pull, lifting as if the name might break if jarred. The phone light hiccuped, battery giving its last, snow thickening. And from deeper in the pipe, behind the kitten, came a sound he hadn't counted. The sound was thinner than the first, thread behind a thread. Not water yet, but the promise of it, running its thumb on stone. Earl tightened his palm around the kitten and inched backward. The grate scraped his cheek, cold licking a path to his ear. The phone light hiccuped again, went dim as a remembering candle. "There's another," he said, voice flattened by iron and snow. Caleb bent lower, shoulders a tent against the wind's teeth. The plow's orange washed the street, a slow tide of warning color. Earl thought about letting go of the first, to reach for the second. He did not this time, not with the small weight trusting his hand. He slid the first kitten free, a wet slip into the scarf's dry cave. Caleb took it and tucked it under his coat, heartbeat to heartbeat. The tiny chest searched for rhythm and found one shy and stubborn. Steam rose off Caleb's breath and made halos on the kitten's fur. Earl pressed the warm rice sock to the mouth of the pipe and waited. Heat felt like language in that dark, the kind even fear understands. He hummed a line he didn't know he knew, low and almost nothing. "Come on, little one," he said, words placed like stepping stones. The deeper sound answered, a small syllable of courage and need. Snow drifted into the great slots and melted into shining commas. He loosened his bootlace and tied it into a loop with his scarf. The knot sat like a plan between his fingers, rough and willing. Caleb held the light with his chin, hands cupped to keep it brave. Earl fed the loop into the pipe, inch by inch, soft as a promise. The plow passed slow, bluffing the shove that never quite came. In the pipe, something shifted, a hesitant scrape against wool. "Easy," he breathed, steering warmth and patience into the dark. The loop snagged, slid, then gentled around a small, damp body. He tightened, not enough to hurt, enough to say, "Stay with me." A thin mule traveled up the scarf like a spark on a fuse. He drew back, every inch a year, every breath a careful tide. The grate kissed his knuckles, unkind and honest and fixed. Caleb leaned his forehead to Earl's shoulder, steadying both of them. The kitten came into view, pale and blinking, a crumpled star. Earl cradled it into his palm, felt a tremor knock on his skin. "5," Caleb whispered, and the number made space in the air. They nested both newcomers in the box, blue towel turning useful. The truck took them in, heater groaning, cab fogging with relief. Headlights found the clinic sign again, a tired moon that stayed put. "Doctor." Singh opened the door before they could knock, hands ready. The room behind was warm as good bread, quiet as held breath. "Mama's stronger," Dr. Singh said, and the word felt right-sized. She laid the kittens along their mother's belly, small pearls on gray. Tiny mouths rooted, missed, found, and latched like first prayers. The mother's eyes fluttered to Earl's voice and stayed a beat. A sound rose half purr, half hum like the house had a throat. Caleb wiped his nose on his sleeve, too proud to notice he did. "Keep them together," the doctor said, moving like a lullaby. Earl nodded, a yes that started in his chest and climbed upward. The clock dared to tick again, as if time trusted them a little. They made a nest at Earl's house, a quiet room off the kitchen. Dryer warm towels, a low lamp, a box lined soft as memory. Bowls became moons of water and a saucer shone with patience. The furnace found its rhythm and kept it, loyal and forgiving. Caleb's drawings labeled the box. Warmth, quiet, no big noises. The mother curled around her litter, parentheses holding miracles. Earl sat watch in a chair that had forgotten why it was empty. He read the paper without seeing it, the words there to keep him company. In the hallway, June's coat hung softer, less like a closed door. Night moved by on felt feet, and the house followed without fear. Days stacked like neat wood, smelling of milk and clean wool. Eyes opened, blue as puddles, then deepened into knowing. Tiny paws needed air, then Earl's sleeve, testing the world's give. Caleb came after school, had a skew, report on each small victory. The mother learned their names, Maple, Penny, Comet, Finch, Dime. She answered to none and to all, purring like a simple engine. Earl spoke out loud in rooms that used to keep their breath. Good work, he told the kittens. Good work, he told the quiet too. Grief didn't leave. It set its cup down and listened with them. In the evenings, the radiator sang and the house sang back. March unfastened winter, and the snowbanks forgot their shape. Sun found the kitchen table and made lakes in the rings of old mugs. Kittens chased dust like confetti, skidding on the bright linoleum. The mother watched from a patch of heat, eyes half moons, wholly here. Caleb held out his hands, and one by one, they trusted the climb. Earl's laugh came back sounding like him, maybe softer, maybe true. He opened the window a thumb and let the world test the screen. Somewhere in the neighborhood, a plow slept and didn't dream of work. The clock on the wall remembered its job and kept good time. And in a house that had practiced silence, a small choir learned a song.